They did not plan to wake up with you on their mind. That is the first thing to understand. Most people are too fragile to face what they hide by force. They push things down. They act calm. They pretend nothing is happening. But this was never quiet. This was a fight they were losing in silence, with no one watching, behind closed eyes and behind a face that tried to stay controlled. You felt the shift, didn't you? That strange change in the air, that quiet pull, that sense that something unspoken was building under the surface. It was not distance. It was not confusion. It was recognition. And recognition is dangerous when someone is trying hard not to feel. People do not welcome strong emotions the moment they appear. They resist them. They question them. They bury them under logic, pride, and the walls they built to protect who they think they are. What they feel for you does not fit the image they want to keep, and that is why it shakes them. The deeper a feeling threatens the ego, the harder it gets pushed down. But buried emotion is never gone. It turns into pressure, and pressure always returns. That is why this morning felt different. Not because something new began, but because something hidden finally cracked. Not in public, not in words, in private, in silence. In that moment, distraction failed. The usual exits failed. The noise stopped working. And when everything around them became still, you did not show up as a simple memory. You showed up as truth. Stay with this, because this is where everything starts to turn. What broke this morning was not their feelings, it was their denial. Attraction can be brushed aside. Curiosity can be explained away. A passing thought can be ignored. But emotional weight is different. It forces a question they did not want to ask. Why does this person affect me this much? They tried to answer that question with logic. They told themselves it was temporary. They said it was timing, chance, chemistry, or nothing serious at all. They gave it every weak label possible because the truth felt too big. But here is the truth. No one fights this hard against something that means nothing. No one keeps trying to bury what has no power. No one spends this much energy running from something unreal. And that is where the mask began to crack. Every attempt to forget you made you clearer. Every effort to step back pulled them deeper in. Every distraction failed at the exact moment they needed it most. That is not weakness. That is inevitability. And they did not want inevitability. They wanted control. You became the one thing they could not control. The feeling they could not solve. The presence they could not neutralize. That is what scared them. Not you by yourself, but what you woke up inside them. Because you did not just stir emotion. You woke up something they could not manage. People do not fear emotion by itself. They fear losing control of themselves because of it. That is why they pulled back. That is why they became hot and cold. That is why their energy felt uneven and scattered. It was never because they felt too little. It was because they felt too much. And too much forces a choice. They were not ready for that. But listen closely. Avoidance is not the absence of desire. It is one of the strongest signs that desire is there. That is the part most people miss. And that is the part that changed everything. From that point on, the conflict did not stay on the surface. It moved inward. One part of their mind kept saying, stay distant, stay careful, stay guarded. But the deeper part of them did not listen. It kept bringing you back. In quiet moments, in pauses, in small empty spaces where distraction faded for even a second, they started to notice something they did not like. You were not fading. You were becoming sharper, more detailed, more real, more impossible to deny. That is when denial begins to lose its grip, because denial needs distance to survive. But your effect was growing inside them, not shrinking. And once a feeling moves from doubt into deep inner certainty, it stops asking for permission. It starts demanding recognition. That moment arrived this morning, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. And that made it even more unsettling, because it was not spoken, it was understood. And once the mind truly understands something, it cannot go back. A person can fool others. They can even fool themselves for a while. But once the truth settles in fully, it does not leave. They know now. Not partly, not vaguely, completely. And that is where peace did not arrive. Chaos did, because now they have to face what this means, what it changes, what it asks from them, and what they risk losing if they keep pretending. Strong feelings do not stay neutral. They grow, they press forward, they ask to be lived. Right now they are standing at the edge of that pressure, trying to hold on to control while everything under them is shifting. And here is the part they still cannot say out loud. This was never only about you, it was about what your presence woke inside them. And that awakening is still expanding. If you are still listening, then you already know. Once a feeling gets a name, escaping it becomes much harder. They thought naming it would calm it down. They were wrong. Giving it a name did not quiet the storm. It made the storm clearer. It turned a vague ache into something real and solid. And the moment that happened, everything changed. Now they cannot hide behind maybe. They cannot pretend it is random. Every thought has weight now. Every memory feels charged. Every silence feels like it means something. This is where the mind begins to split. One side wants to move toward you. The other side wants to pull back and protect itself. This is not confusion, it is division. It is a war between desire and defense, between longing and fear. And both sides are growing stronger because what they feel is no longer simple attraction. It is becoming attachment. And attachment is terrifying to someone who is used to staying in control. The deeper the emotional current gets, the stronger the defenses become. That is why they did not move forward after recognizing it. They slowed down. They overthought. They started treating something natural like it was dangerous because now it carries real weight. And anything with weight feels like risk. A risk to independence. A risk to identity. A risk to the self-image they spent years protecting. But here is a truth no one can escape. People do not fear what they do not value. The same feeling pulling them closer is the same feeling making them pull away. That contradiction drains them. It follows them everywhere. It slips into ordinary moments and changes them. A tone in someone's voice, a pause, a kind of silence, a passing detail. Suddenly it all brings them back to you. Not because they want it to, but because something deeper has marked you as important. And once someone crosses that line inside the mind, they are no longer optional. They become part of the inner world. And once that happens, nothing feels simple anymore. Then came the question they have been avoiding at all costs. Why you? Out of everyone, out of all possibilities, why does your presence reach them like this? Why does your absence hit this hard? Why does one thought of you carry more force than 100 other things that should matter more? The more they look for a clean answer, the less clean it becomes. Because this was not built on convenience. It was not created by perfect timing. It cannot be reduced to one easy reason. It goes deeper than that. It feels like recognition, and recognition is frightening because it does not feel chosen. It feels unavoidable. That is when the fear gets stronger. Because if this is real, then it demands something from them. It asks for action. It asks for honesty. It asks for vulnerability. And they have spent years avoiding all three, so they stall, they create distance. They try to slow down something that is already speeding up inside them. But distance does not weaken a real bond. It often sharpens it. When outside noise disappears, only truth remains, and that truth is getting louder, not softer, stronger, not weaker. They feel it in the way their thoughts keep circling back. They feel it when emotion rises without warning. They feel it when something inside them refuses to rest no matter how hard they try to calm it. This is where real tension begins. They know, but they still resist. They sense it, but they keep questioning it. They recognize it, but they still avoid its full weight. That creates pressure that does not leave. It builds, it tightens, it waits, and sooner or later, something has to break. So do not click away yet, because this is where the hidden part becomes impossible to ignore. They are not only fighting the feeling, they are fighting what the feeling reveals about them, and that is what makes it unbearable. What does it reveal? It reveals a hunger to connect, a longing to be seen, a fear of being moved this deeply by another person. And that last part is the most dangerous one for them, because being moved means becoming vulnerable, and vulnerability feels like surrender. They are not comfortable with surrender, not even close. So they swing back and forth. One moment they lean in emotionally, the next they pull back mentally. One moment they imagine what this could become. The next they convince themselves it is too much, too messy, too risky. That push and pull is not random, it is a shield. It lets them feel without fully giving in. But no one can only half experience something this strong forever. They can delay it, they can cover it, they can act above it. But delay always comes with a price. Buried emotion does not disappear. It turns into tension, into restlessness, into a constant inner noise that never fully stops. And lately that noise has been getting louder, sharper, more relentless. Now it is not only emotional, it is affecting their focus, their mood, their reactions, even the way they move through ordinary life. Small things irritate them more, quiet moments feel heavier, random triggers hit harder. Why? Because under everything, an unresolved truth is pushing upward. It wants space. It wants expression. It wants a decision. They are not ready to give that yet, not fully, but soon they may not have a choice. Pressure like this does not settle. It rises, it expands, it reaches a point where holding it in becomes more painful than letting it out. And right now, they are much closer to that point than they realize. Something is starting to crack under the surface, not where others can see it, not where performance and composure live. Deeper than that, in the place where the masks stop working and the truth has no reason to hide. The longer real emotion is suppressed, the harder it returns. Not softly, not politely, with force, with urgency, with a kind of intensity that cuts through every excuse. That is what is happening now. What once felt manageable no longer feels manageable. What once felt far away now feels immediate. What once seemed deniable now feels painfully obvious. And when the deeper mind can no longer be kept under control, it does not bargain, it breaks through. You can see it in their reactions, in their irritability, in how little things suddenly trigger larger feelings, in how their focus disappears the second you enter their thoughts. Because now you are not just a thought, you are an interruption, a jolt, a reality inside them that they cannot switch off anymore. They are starting to understand something deeply unsettling. You are not only someone in their life, you have become someone in their inner world, and that changes everything. External things can be avoided, they can be replaced, they can be pushed aside. Internal truths follow a person into silence, into sleep, into every private moment they thought belonged only to them. That is why resistance is starting to weaken. The question is no longer do I feel something, that part is over. Now the question is what am I going to do with this? And that is the question they fear the most. Because doing something means being seen means being exposed means losing control. But here is the truth. No one can control something that has already changed them, and you have changed them, not in a small way, not for a moment, in the way they process closeness, in the way they understand connection, in the way your absence now feels louder than your presence ever did. And that is what is tearing at them, not simply missing you, feeling you even when you are not there. If this is hitting home, keep listening, because the next part is where the whole structure starts to fall apart. That is the real tension. They keep trying to move past you, yet every path brings them back to the same place. Nothing else feels the same. That quiet comparison is slowly destroying the walls they built because now other things feel weaker, flatter, less meaningful, less alive. And when that becomes clear, panic begins to rise. Quiet panic, hidden panic, the kind no one else notices. Because if something cannot be replaced, then losing it becomes terrifyingly real. And the fear of losing something genuine is stronger than the fear of never having it. That fear begins to shape behavior. That is why they seem inconsistent, unpredictable, pulled between impulse and restraint. One part of them wants to move closer, to face the truth, to stop the noise inside. Another part, older and more conditioned, tells them to hold back, protect themselves, and avoid what feels overwhelming. Neither side is winning, neither side is leaving, and that is exhausting them. Now the struggle is no longer only emotional, it is becoming existential. It forces them to look at who they really are versus who they pretend to be. The version of them that avoids you is not the same version that feels you. They cannot keep both alive forever. One of them has to give. And something else is happening too. They are starting to see their own pattern. They notice when they avoid. They notice when they change the subject in their own mind. They notice when they distract themselves just before getting too close to the truth. That awareness hurts because it destroys the illusion that they are still in full control. Once a person sees their own avoidance clearly, it becomes harder to keep using it. Retreat starts to feel empty. Distance starts to feel fake. Even silence starts to feel like betrayal. That is why the breaking point is getting more solid. They are running out of places to hide within themselves. They cannot return to ignorance. They cannot go numb again. Something real has shifted, and that shift is asking for resolution sooner than they want. The mind can endure confusion for a while. It can even survive denial, but it cannot live inside constant contradiction forever. Eventually something gives. That is where they are now. Breaking, not in some dramatic public way, but inwardly, where truth has cornered them and stripped away every easy exit. Logic no longer helps. Distraction no longer saves them. Distance no longer protects them. The methods they relied on have stopped working. And when that happens, confrontation becomes the final stage. It comes whether a person feels ready or not. The deeper mind no longer asks for permission at this point. It demands alignment. Right now they are not aligned. What they feel and what they do are pulling in opposite directions, and that creates a sharp inner dissonance that will not let them rest. Once the mind reaches this stage, it does not simply go backward and become calm again. It moves toward decision. That decision may not be spoken yet, but it is already taking shape beneath the surface. They know this matters, not a little, not for a passing season, deeply, lastingly. And once something is defined like that inside the mind, every excuse starts sounding hollow. Every delay starts looking staged. Every attempt to minimize it feels like a quiet act of self-betrayal. People can survive pain, they can survive fear, but they cannot keep betraying what they know to be true forever. At some point, the cost becomes too high. They are nearing that point now. The cost of avoiding you is starting to feel heavier than the cost of facing you, and that changes the whole direction of things. Because once the mind identifies avoidance as the real enemy, it stops protecting it. It starts tearing it down, piece by piece, excuse by excuse, wall by wall. They can feel that happening already. Their resistance is weakening, not because they wanted it to, but because they can no longer defend it honestly. The illusion is collapsing now, the illusion that they can keep control forever, the illusion that they can carry this feeling quietly and never act on it, the illusion that time would make it fade. Time did not erase it, time exposed it, time sharpened it, time gave it shape, and now it has nowhere left to go except outward. Truths that reach this level inside a person begin asking for expression. That is where they are, right at the line where silence feels heavier than speech, where doing nothing feels harder than taking the risk. The question is no longer should I do something, it is how much longer can I keep avoiding it? And the answer is not much longer, because something in them has already decided, even if the surface part of them is still trying to delay, still trying to hold on to the last scraps of control. The real decision was made below conscious thought, and that is the part that matters. Action usually follows inner conviction, and their conviction has changed completely. They do not question you the way they used to. They do not doubt what they feel the way they did before. They do not shrink it, label it, or reduce it anymore. They know, and knowing changes the atmosphere of everything. Now each moment of silence feels off. Each second of distance feels unnatural. Every attempt to act normal falls apart before it even settles. This is where everything begins to converge. The pressure, the fear, the longing, the awareness, all of it tightening into one unavoidable realization. They cannot keep living like this. Something has to move. Something has to shift. Once that realization locks in, action stops being a distant possibility and becomes a coming event. Maybe not this second, maybe not in the exact way they imagined, but it becomes unavoidable. And once the inner world changes this deeply, the outer world always follows. Most people never talk about this part. When someone fully accepts what they feel, peace does not come first. Urgency does. Restlessness does. A constant need for movement does. Clarity does not calm them down. It pushes them. That is where they are right now, caught in that push, trying to contain it, trying to manage it, trying to postpone what already feels certain. But delayed truth has a way of returning with even more force. You can resist expression. You can hold back action. You can try to stay composed. But you cannot remove what has already taken root. What they feel for you is no longer fragile. It is no longer half-formed. It is no longer something they can walk away from without feeling the loss of something real inside themselves. It exists fully now. And something real does not disappear just because it is inconvenient. That is why this has become a matter of time. Not if, not maybe, time. The truth already has hold of them from the inside. And once truth settles there, the outside world eventually starts reflecting it. When that happens, it will not feel casual. It will not be easy to miss. Suppressed truth rarely returns in a gentle way. It comes back with force, urgency, and a kind of unmistakable weight. And when that moment opens, there will be no need to guess what they feel. No need to analyze every small sign. No need to decode mixed signals. It will be clear because it is already clear inside them. That is the turning point. They did not simply understand their feelings. They understood they cannot keep escaping them. And once a person reaches that realization, every wall begins to fail, every defense begins to weaken, every hidden truth begins moving closer to the surface. So if you have felt something building, if you have sensed the energy changing, trust that what is happening inside them is no longer small. It is growing teeth. It is becoming impossible to contain. And this is the final pressure. Not soft, not distant, final. They are reaching the point where inner truth starts demanding outer action. They may still pause. They may still hesitate. They may still try one more time to gather themselves and act untouched. But deep down, that version of control is already gone. Too much has shifted. Too much has been seen. Too much has been felt. The truth has crossed the line from hidden emotion into lived reality. That changes how a person breathes, thinks, reacts, remembers, and imagines what comes next. Now, when they picture the future, your presence is there. When they try to return to old emotional habits, something feels off. When they attempt to dismiss what is happening, the lie feels thin. This is what it means when a feeling stops being optional. It becomes part of the structure of the self. And once that happens, a person cannot keep acting as if nothing has changed. The body knows, the mind knows, the silence knows, even their resistance knows. That is why the next move is no longer about creating emotion. The emotion is already here. The next move is about whether they keep fighting it or finally let their actions catch up to what they already know. Because that is the real issue now. Alignment. They are tired of the split, tired of acting one way while feeling another, tired of carrying a truth that keeps asking to be spoken, shown, lived. That exhaustion matters. Exhaustion lowers defenses. Exhaustion makes old walls easier to break. Exhaustion turns delay into burden. And right now that burden is growing by the day, by the hour, by every quiet moment they spend face to face with themselves. They are closer than ever to the moment where holding back feels more painful than reaching out. Closer than ever to the second where silence stops feeling safe and starts feeling unbearable. And when that second comes, everything shifts. Not because the feeling suddenly appeared, but because it finally refuses to stay hidden.